Hello everyone. This video will be going over factoring trinomials in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, the last video just had the form x squared plus bx plus c, but this time we're going to factor whenever there's a value in front of the a, and that's when the a is not equal to 1. Okay, and we call that the a times c method. Okay, so here are the steps to factor using the a times c method. Okay, so your first step, only if it's possible, in some cases you can skip the first step, but if possible, factor out the greatest common factor from each of the terms. Okay, so the second step, you're going to find two numbers that multiply whatever a times c is equal to. Okay, and those same two numbers add to equal b. Okay, now your third step is you're going to replace the b times x term with whatever two numbers you have from step 2. Okay, so that will give you 4 terms, and once you get 4 terms, your fourth step will be factor by grouping. Okay, which was covered in previous videos. Alright, so if you are still writing, please feel free to press pause, but we're going to go into our first example. Okay, so let's say, for example, we wanted to factor 8x squared minus 14x plus 5. Okay, so here we see we have a value in front of the x squared that's not 1. Okay, so this is our ax squared plus bx plus c form, where your a, b, and c are right there. Okay, so now we're going to go through our steps. Okay, so your first step, you can't factor a value other than 1 out of all 3 of those terms. So you don't have a common factor. So there's no greatest common factor, so you can skip that step. Okay, now for your second step, I'm just going to rewrite it, 8x squared minus 14x plus 5. Now in this case, your a is equal to 8. Your b is equal to negative 14. And your c is equal to 5. Okay, so that means we have to find two numbers that multiply to equal a times c, and those same two numbers add to equal b. Okay, so before we move on, we have to find out what a times c is. Okay, so we see here that a times c is 8 times 5, which is 40. Okay, so we have to find two numbers that multiply to equal 40, and those same two numbers add to equal our b, which is negative 14. Okay, so we know here that when we multiply these two numbers together, it'll be positive, but when we add them, they'll be negative. So we know these two would have to be negative. Okay, so we see here that 10 times 4 is 40, and 10 plus 4 is 14. So if we make both of those negative, you have negative 10 times negative 4 is positive 40, and negative 10 plus negative 4 is negative 14. Okay, so we have our two values. Okay, now for our third step, we're going to replace our bx value. So in this case, it's our negative 14x. We're going to replace that value with those two. So replace negative 14x with the step 2 values. Okay, so that means that our 8x squared minus 14x plus 5 becomes, and this is the really cool part, 8x squared, and instead of minus 14x, you're going to replace minus 14 with negative 10 and negative 4. Because it's still minus 14, you're just rewriting it. So you have minus 10x minus 4x plus 5. Okay, so all you did was turn those 3 terms into 4 terms. And then we do our fourth step, which is factor by grouping. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move this up a little bit. Okay, so fourth, we factor by grouping. Okay, so if you remember your factor by grouping, 8x squared minus 10x minus 4x plus 5, our first step is to make our 2 smaller groups. Then our second step is we're going to find the greatest common factor from each of those 2 subgroups. So from these 2 terms, we can factor out a 2x, which leaves us with 4x minus 5. And if you use the distributive property, you'll end up right back with 8x squared minus 10x. Okay, so these 2 don't have anything in common, but you can factor out a negative 1, which will leave us with 4x minus 5. And if you distribute, you'll see that you end up right back here. Okay, now once you do that, you see here, you have your common binomial. Okay, so they match. And as long as those 2 match, you can factor that right on out. Okay, so you have 4x minus 5. You factor that out to the front, and you can go ahead and cross that out. And whatever is left goes into the next binomial. So you have 2x minus 1. Okay, and actually that is your answer. Alright, so it doesn't matter, just to let you know, it doesn't matter which order you put these in. If you put it as negative 10, negative 4, it will be the same as if you put negative 4, negative 10. Okay, so I'm going to show you really quickly what would happen if I put it as minus 4, minus 10. Okay, so if you have 8x squared minus 4x minus 10x plus 5. Okay, so if we did our factor by grouping, and we factored out a 2x in both of those, nope, 4x in both of those, sorry about that. So we have our 4x, okay, which will leave us with 2x minus 1, and if we distribute, we end up right back there. And if we have minus 5 that we factor out of both of those, we have 2x minus 1. So here we have our same matching binomial. So we bring that out to the front. And you can go ahead and cross those out. And whatever is left goes into the next one, which is 4x minus 5. Okay, so the only difference is both of them are switched up. So instead of 4x minus 5 times 2x minus 1, you get 2x minus 1 times 4x minus 5. Which is the same thing, just switched around. So it doesn't matter at all which one you put first. Okay, so just in case you were worried about it, you don't have to. You would be good either way. All right, so if you're still writing this down, please feel free to press pause. But now we're going to go to our next example. Here we go. So let's say, for example, we wanted to factor 2x squared plus 13x plus 6. Alright. And again, we don't have anything we can factor out of all three terms. Okay, we can factor 2 out of the first and last one, but we can't do it on this one. But we have to be able to factor out of all three. So your first step, there's no greatest common factor, so we can skip that first step. Okay, so for your second step, just go ahead and rewrite it. 2x squared plus 13x plus 6. We see here our a is equal to 2, our b is equal to 13, and our c is equal to 6. Alright, so again we have to find two numbers that multiply to equal a times c, and those same two numbers add to equal b, which means we have to find our a times c first. Okay, and I'll just draw a little square around that. That's sort of just a reminder. So the first thing you have to do is find your a times c. A times c is equal to 2 times 6, which is 12. Okay, so we found our a times c. So that means we have to find two numbers that multiply to equal 12. And those same two numbers add to equal b, which is 13. Okay, and if you watch the last video, you'll see that I gave you a hint that when you find the absolute value of those two are just one digit apart, that's the easiest one to solve. Because this is just 12 times 1 and 12 plus 1. Okay, so we found our two values. Okay, which brings us to our third step, where you replace your middle term with those two values. Okay, so we're going to replace 13x with the step 2 values. Okay, so that means our 2x squared plus 13x plus 6, which is what we started with, becomes 2x squared. And instead of 13x, you get 12x plus 1x, or 1x plus 12x. Doesn't matter either way. Okay, so plus 12x plus 1x plus 6. Okay, so all we did was we replaced that middle term with the two values from step 2. Alright, so our fourth step is just factor by grouping. Okay, so that means, let me rewrite that, 2x squared plus 12x plus 1x plus 6. You can put x, but I like to put 1x there just because it helps me to visualize. Okay, so remember factor by grouping, the first step is you're going to take those 4 terms and turn them into 2 sets of 2 rather. Then you're going to find the greatest common factor for both of those. Here you can factor a 2x out of these terms. So you have 2x, and that will leave you with x plus 6. And again, if you want to double check, you just distribute and you'll get 2x squared plus 12x all over again. And these two, the most you can do is factor out a 1. And that will leave us with x plus 6. Again, you can double check it just by distributing. Okay, which gives us our goal of our matching binomials. Okay, so as long as those two are matching, we can just factor those right out to the front. Okay, so we have our x plus 6, and we go ahead and cross those out. And what's left goes into the other binomial, which is 2x plus 1. Okay, and once again, if you put 1x and 12x, and you just switch those two up, you get the same answer, but those two would just be switched around. So it will be true either way. Alright, so hopefully you're starting to get the process down a little bit. Okay, if you're still writing, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead to our next example. Alright, so let's say for this example, we want to factor 3x squared plus 11x plus 6. Okay, and what I want you to do is I want you to press pause and try this one for yourself. Use the exact same steps from the previous two examples. Okay, so hopefully you're all done. We're going to go ahead and solve this one. Okay, so 3, 11, and 6, you don't have anything in common that you can factor out. So your first step there, you can skip that because there's no greatest common factor. Alright, so your second step. Okay, we're going to go ahead and rewrite it. 3x squared plus 11x plus 6. We know that a is equal to 3, b is equal to 11, and c is equal to 6. Okay, so we know using the a times c method, we have to find our a times c. So we know that a times c is 3 times 6, which is 18. Okay, so that means we have to find two numbers that multiply to equal 18, and those same two numbers add to equal your b value, which is 11. Okay, so we just have to figure out what makes that work. So we could try 6 and 3. Well, 6 plus 3 is 9, which wouldn't match up there. So we can try 9 times 2. 9 times 2 is 18, and 9 plus 2 is 11. Okay, so we figured that part out. So now we go to our third step. Okay, now our third step just means we're going to replace that 11x with those two values. Okay, so we're going to replace our 11x with our step 2 values. Okay, so our original 3x squared plus 11x plus 6 becomes 3x squared, and instead of 11x, we have plus 9 plus 2, plus 9x plus 2x plus 6. And remember, if you put plus 2 plus 9, you'll still get the right answer. I mean, plus 2x plus 9x, you'll get the right answer. Okay, so then we do our fourth step, which is factor by grouping. Alright, so just going to write the 3x squared plus 9x plus 2x plus 6. And we go ahead and make that into two smaller subgroups. Okay, these two terms we can factor out of 3x. And that will leave us with x plus 3. These two we can factor out of 2, which will leave us with x plus 3. Okay, so these two match, so that means we can factor those right out to the front. Okay, so we can factor out the x plus 3 and draw a line through it if you like, which means our 3x plus 2 goes here. Okay, and remember, if you had 2x plus 9x and you just switch those two around, you get the same answer, just 3x plus 2 will be in the front and x plus 3 will be behind it, which is still correct. Alright, so hopefully that made sense, and I will see you on the next video.